Well, Barson Mbeseha, you know more than I do what the history of Ambazonian education has been, and looking at it in ruins right now with the continued propagation of lies of normalcy. Would like to hear your thoughts in this regard.
Yes, I will gladly give my thoughts. But if you permit me, we're not finished with Dr. Mungwa. There are other things Dr. Mungwa said which require clarification. And I plead you to let me go
Certainly,
back to
please
that
do.
segment
Certainly.
because that is important. Dr. Mungwa said, and that is our thing, that he referred to Fumba, that there will only be the parties to the conflict will be the ones to sit on the table. I referred to Fumba, and I want to go back to it and let us know that what we're saying as this government is not an invention. We've always said that the history of Ambazonia, southern Cameroon, is a historically documented history. What was Fumban and what happened in Fumban? We're not going to discuss what happened there. We're going to discuss of those who sat in the conference in Fumban for them to realize what Dr. Mongwa is talking about. Fumban was as a result of Resolution 1608. The parties, the government of West Cameroon, Southern Cameroon, the government of Cameroon, the Republic of Cameroon, and the administrative authority would meet. These were the three parties. But it was still never met, but they attempted to meet. That's what is referred to as Fumban, July 17th, 1961. What was the composition of the parties? Frontier went to Fumban with a large delegation of people. In fact, a delegation of 50 people. But these people were identified, but they fell under the delegation of the government of Southern Cameroon. They were properly documented. I have them here with their names. Who were those people and what did they represent? They had members of government, that's government ministers inside there. They had representatives of political parties, notably KNDP, CPNC, and even the OK. The OK that had only one parliamentarian in the West Cameroon, in the Southern Cameroon House of Assembly, was represented by two delegates, among them Abed Mukom. We also had the technical staff. That, for example, was led by Fonlong. He went there as an interpreter. And so you find that the composition of the West Cameroon government was so big and comprehensive. What a delegation of chiefs, House of Chiefs, and important responsibilities. All of this jointly formed one delegation of Ambazonia, headed by Foncha. So Foncha did not ignore the fact that within the southern Cameroon where he was, there were different components there. For example, CPNC of Ndele was fighting that we should go to Nigeria. They didn't win the plebiscite, but they constituted part of the delegation. And so they were globally put together and called the delegation of Southern Cameroon, headed by Foncha alone. And so they went like that with 50 people representing this group. So how shall our back to Southern Cameroon? Before I go back to Southern Cameroon, Ahijo came there with a delegation of 12. These are 12 names here. His delegation, because it was already an independent country, his delegation of 12 represented ministries. They had the foreign ministry represented there, what the Ministry of Territorial Administration represented there, what representative of the Prime Minister, the technical advisors in the presidency, and so on and so forth. All of them formed a delegation of 12 to represent Cameroon. No matter the size, they were big in population, bigger than Southern Cameroon, 3.2 million. Southern Cameroon, 800,000. We produced 50 people. Despite their size, they produced 12. But there were two equal delegations, equal in status. And so, back to what Dr. Mongwa was saying and addressing Ambazonians. What does it mean? Because we've seen this thing happening all the time. And this is sink to the heads of our people. Anybody who is thinking that at the appropriate time, you will find a delegation on the table sitting in the name of SCNC, for example, in the name of SCAPO, for example, in the name of consortium, for example, or all those other groups, you're deceiving yourself. We will not lose sight of the fact that those groups exist. But if they must sit on the table, they will constitute part of the delegation of West Cameroon, Ambazonia. As Funcha went to that place with 50 people, as she said, as Dr. Mungwa said, did they expect 50 people to sit on the conference table and draw up the constitution? Because Fuman was about the constitution. Now, that was the public show of the delegation, which ended with speeches. The opening speech was made by Ahijo, another speech was made by Foncha, and the second speech was made by Endele, who was not even wanting us to join them. Those were the public declarations of the thing. If Fumban had succeeded, again, if Fumban had succeeded to continue, that delegation of 50 people would have chosen, not even among themselves, they would have had their own experts in constitutional development. Experts probably would not have been up to 10 who had experience, expertise in drawing up constitutions, who would sit on the table with a delegation of East Cameroon, or like people to Cameroon, and draw up a constitution. But I said if we had succeeded, it failed. Because that conference, after 2 days, did not even give Frontier the opportunity to bring his own experts, his constitutional experts, to sit together with the experts from Yaoundé. They didn't even give them the opportunity because they have already drawn up a constitution by amending the constitution by themselves, adopting it a 2 weeks after that, and imposing it on us. So this is just to explain that what the people, the parties to the negotiation are going to be constituted. The SCNC, again, if I say, we don't call them political parties, just like CPNC, just like OK was in West Cameroon. They will sit in that delegation. If they still consider themselves Ambazonians. They will not impose a will. They will not go and take a seat because I saw something happening in Canada. People sitting there say, oh, I'm for SCNC. Another can say, oh, I'm for women, where I'm a Takumban woman. All claiming to be talking for Ambazonia. Other one talking for consulting. That disorder is not going to work. And again, even to get to that point, there will be agreement between the West Cameroon, the Ambazonian delegation, and Yaoundé. Those are the two parties to the conflict. What would they be agreeing? They will be agreeing on the venue, one. They will be agreeing on the mediator. This has not happened since we started. That's why Canada 1 failed, Canada 2 failed, Canada 3 failed. Because all these Canadas, call it CPDM, call it CDN, or call it pre-talks. They were all talks between among Ambazonians themselves. They were not talks between Ambazonia and Yaoundé. They were talking to themselves. And so they could not constitute a delegation because after all, why is Yaoundé going to go to the table? Why are we talking about delegation? The idea is to end the war because if there's no war, they will not be talking all this. SCNC cannot end the war. They are not fighting anywhere. The consortium cannot end the war. They are not fighting anywhere. All these other parties that saw FRAP or whatever thing they call it, they are not fighting the war. If Yaoundé wants the war to end, they have to talk to the right party. The right party, as we have said, we have gone back to 1961 and reinstated the government that was referred to in the 1608 resolution, the government of Southern Cameroon. We have reconstituted it today in exile because there is no space for us to sit in Boy. They have occupied the space by killing our own people. So there is no way we can sit there and do it, but we can freely operate from exile with all these institutions and the human persons behind it. The human persons behind it will include the first person you know is President Sago. Faku is not a ghost, he's a human being. He talks. And so that's why he talks. But let me now go back to your original question. Education, that was what he wanted us to discuss. Education, we all know it. We knew what education meant in Southern Cameroon. We know what education is today. And I would suspect very, very strongly that all these, our pastors, our moderators, our bishops, the bulk of them, if not all of them, if they were born in 1960, they were so young, they were babies. You don't know what happened. They probably have read it. but they were practically there. But I can say, without mincing words, I was there. By 1961, 62, I left primary school. So I was ready. By 1964, I was teaching. I taught. So I know what education meant. It was kind of what it was supposed to be. I did not only teach, I went to teacher training. I'm trained to teach, train how to build schools, train how to manage schools. So in terms of education, in that angle, I can claim myself, I can style myself an expert to a limited extent. So what is going on there is a total failure of education. Even Yaoundé agrees. The schools that they call schools are abandoned. Even before they were abandoned, would they be called schools? They were not schools. That is why the idea of education was at the basis of the 2016 dispute, which has resulted in this. They were not schools, they were shadows of schools. Call schools in name and transformed to Francalinga schools. You didn't know where you were learning French or you were learning English. The French was not good, the English was not good. What is between, what in the middle? Nothing. And so our people make the mistake to compare, for example. So where schools are going on in Ambazonia, because after the GCE board is there, people are passing the GCE. No, the quality of the education is not based on the results from the GCE. The GCE board is just an examination board that organizes exams. Anybody can write examination under the GCE board. A Chadian can register to write. A Japanese can register to write. Before the GCE board came, before they even got it, who wrote the GCE? Who wrote the GCE under the London GCE? I wrote the London GCE. I've never been to London. But we read under their school program, we wrote the London GCE, the London Examination Board declared us successful. So the success in the GCE is not a standard for qualifying the education that we have in Ambazonia as good. Because a good number of refugees, internally displaced, you call them, whatever you call them, will find themselves in Douala or somewhere else. They go to schools. The bulk of them are private schools. Those are the who remain, still go to schools. They go to Sacred Heart. They go to Seka. These are not government schools. These are schools that are properly orientated, properly run by missionary organizations. And so our schools are a shadow of the schools. And as we speak, unfortunately, in 1972, when they abolished the federation, the Ambazonian public was deceived to turn to something they call government schools. Until then, there were very few, if at all, any government schools in Ambazonia. No, schools were privately run and sponsored by what they call grants in aid. Those schools were run by missionaries. They were run by councils. Even councils were called any school. They were voluntary agencies. Government only funded them and guided the program. And the schools were good. But came 1972 when they abolished the schools, when they abolished our government, that school system collapsed and tended to be replaced by government schools, which have turned out to be a total failure.
Yeah, Barrister Mbeseha, most of what you've said points to the fact that even the educational system, from what you said, it didn't only start, the deterioration didn't only start when the war escalated. It started way before. And indeed, it really points to the colonial infiltration into Ambazonia's culture and everything that has to do with Ambazonia's pride. Well, that is why this war of liberation continues, for Ambazonians to free themselves from such invasion into their culture and what they stand by and hold dear.